In this video, I'll tell you what Babbel is, how it works, the pros, and then at the end, we'll go over some cons because we gotta keep it real. Oh, and make sure you watch till the end because I'll show you how it compares to other language apps like Drops, Busuu, and Duolingo. That way, you can find out the best app for your needs. So what is Babbel? It launched in 2007 and it's considered one of the world's first language apps. And Babbel is designed by expert linguists. Fancy! The focus is on real-life vocabulary, which is always a plus. No one wants to learn how to ask for someone's fax number. I used Babbel for a month and I found it pretty useful. It gives you a nice solid foundation. The lesson format is great. It's short and sweet, about 5 to 10 minutes per lesson. So it's pretty nice to do when you're on the go, but there could definitely be a bit more excitement, and I'll tell you what I mean by this a little later. Now, what languages can you learn with Babbel? 14 languages, including Spanish, French, German, Italiano, Russian, Portuguese, and English. But it's missing some languages that are definitely on my language bucket list. I'll tell you which later, but spoiler alert, if you're into K-dramas, do not get Babbel. One thing that I found really cool is that you can actually choose the language of instruction that you prefer. For example, instead of choosing English to learn Italian, I can choose German to learn Italian. That way, while I'm learning Italian, I'm actually reviewing my German at the same time. So this is a very nice feature, especially if you're into learning more than one language at once. So the lesson format is pretty simple. Each lesson features both text, audio, and images of the vocabulary. There are fill-in-the-blank and multiple choice questions where you have to provide the translations. Sometimes you'll get a short grammar explanation in between exercises. There are also exercises where you have to listen and then repeat phrases using the speech recognition system. These were my favorite. Io parlo italiano. After every lesson, there's a short overview of what you got right and your mistakes. And you can choose to redo the lesson, but only focusing on everything that you got wrong. This was extremely helpful, especially because sometimes I have trouble with Italian verb conjugation. So I could always just go back and try again. You can also check your overall progress and set goals and reminders so that you keep on track. One of the things that I enjoyed the most was actually the review system. It utilizes spaced repetition, which is one of the best learning tools out there. Plus, there are some really cute mini games where you can review what you learned in the lessons, like vocab. Along with the regular lessons, there are actually some extra features, like everyday conversations where you listen to two people talking without subtitles. Then you replace one of the speakers and you use the speech recognition tool to say your part of the dialogue. This feature is pretty cool, especially if you don't have anyone to practice with. But unfortunately, it's not available in every language. There's also a new AI conversation feature. You're given a setting and some tasks to complete alongside the AI. For example, ordering a coffee at a cafe. Since this is new and we're also dealing with AI, we need to be very careful because naturally it's not always going to be accurate. It also didn't catch some of the mistakes that I made, so I would still use this feature, but just with extra caution. Now, if you want to focus on listening skills, you'd enjoy the audio recap feature. It's basically an audio lesson where you review all the material that you've already learned. There's usually a dialogue where it's broken down into smaller parts, and then you review the vocab and some cultural explanations. Then you hear the whole dialogue again, and then you take a quiz to test what you've learned. Now, for those of you who love grammar, maybe that's just me, there are simple grammar explanations that help out your understanding. But there aren't many grammar topics for intermediate or advanced learners. So if you're in that level, it won't be as useful. Plus, I found out that some languages like French and Dutch don't even have this feature. Babbel also has some bonus content like podcasts and magazines. One feature that's very cool is called Culture Bites. They're short, fun videos about cultural facts and insights. But unfortunately, they just have it for a few languages like Spanish. They don't have these culture bites for Italian, so I had to learn the hard way that you can't order a cappuccino after 10 a.m. in Italy. I actually got yelled at, but it was in Italian, so I consider that a great listening exercise. Finally, Babbel has some live classes with native teachers. The first class is free. After that, they're not included in the subscription, so you'll have to pay extra. It might be worth it if you're looking for direct feedback from a teacher. Now, let's talk about what matters. How much is all of this going to cost you? Currently, the monthly subscription is around $10 a month. And if you're willing to commit to a longer subscription, the price goes down a bit. Now, one thing that's cool that with one single subscription, you can access all the languages. Now, Babbel has a huge downside, which I'll get to when we go over the cons. But first, the pros. Babbel teaches usable language. The vocab is used in a realistic way, so you can quickly apply what you've learned to real-life scenarios. This is especially useful if you have an upcoming trip planned. This feature was a lot more pronounced in the audio recaps and everyday conversations feature because the vocab is presented to you in a dialogue of casual conversations. And this would really capture my attention because I would not only see the vocab in action, but it would also show me useful ways to use it in real life scenarios. Now, this is a big pro for Babbel, especially because other apps usually feature vocab in a more isolated way. This pro could be improved a bit if there was more cultural context and if it were a bit more engaging, like in a video format. Plus, if they have this feature for every language. Okay, now pro number 2, lessons built upon previous knowledge. So Babbel's content is designed to have a logical flow of progression. So you start with very basic words and phrases before moving on to more complex conversation and sentences. Oh, and this is great because I never felt lost or that the content wasn't appropriate for my level. And this really helps with motivation and it keeps me wanting to show up every day. And it also doesn't allow me time to forget things, which can be frustrating when you're learning a new language because you're constantly battling between learning new things while trying not to forget the things you've already learned. Number 3, Babbel includes language tips within lessons. Now, Babbel's last big pro would definitely be the amount of language tips that each lesson gives you. They are generally about grammar, formality, sentence structure, and so on. They're pretty quick, simple, and interactive, so you don't get bored. And they're very helpful because you can understand how the language works and the logic behind the rules. Now, this is something I usually miss on other language learning apps. Looking at you, Duolingo. Now, not everything's perfect, so let's talk about some cons. I think the first big con we can agree on is the limited language choice. Now, I know that 14 languages sounds like a lot, but for an app that's been on the market for over 10 years, oh my gosh, 2007 is actually almost 20 years ago. Okay, 20 years, I would expect there to be more languages. And it's missing languages that have grown in popularity over the years, like Chinese, Japanese, and Korean. It's clear that they've spent a lot of time and effort with each of the courses. And I really hope that Babbel is working on implementing the curriculum so that they can attract more learners. Now, con number 2, inconsistent content across languages. This one was one of the most frustrating. Like I said before, the amount of content you have access to depends on which languages you pick. So there might be some languages and levels that are missing some great content, like the culture bites. Plus, some languages don't even have the standard curriculum fully completed. For example, if you want to learn Spanish, then you're in luck because the course goes all the way up to advanced. But if you want to learn Portuguese or Polish, then the only complete course is beginner. So once you complete the beginner level, you'll have to look for another resource so that you can reach the advanced level. Now, this is definitely weird because you're paying the same price no matter which language you choose to learn. So Babbel may not be worth it depending on the language you choose. Con number 3, the exercises can be a bit boring. Unlike some other popular apps like Duolingo, Babbel isn't very game-like in format. In fact, it's pretty much like a textbook adapted into an app. This is completely fine if that's what you're looking for in an app. But typically, you need more resources and different forms of content so that you can actually develop all 4 language skills: speaking, reading, listening, and writing. But also, you need to stay consistent with language learning, which everyone knows is the key to achieving fluency. Most of Babbel's exercises are fill in the blank or match the image with the vocabulary, which again, you can get from any textbook. The images are also a bit generic, so they're not very memorable. And I think all of this doesn't really justify getting a subscription. Con number 4, the exercises are repetitive. Because of the repetitive nature of the exercises, sometimes I would catch myself opening an Instagram notification instead of continuing the lesson. And at the start of a new lesson, I always knew what to expect because it's always the same. The lesson format is very consistent: vocab, useful phrases, dialogue. And the questions and answers are always the same style. This repetitive pattern at first might be good for memorization, but it keeps you less engaged in the long run. I think it would be better if Babbel simply featured other forms of media, like maybe some authentic videos, just to make the lesson a little bit more interactive. Con number 5. There's no free trial, so you can't test out all the features to see if they work for you. Now, how does Babbel compare to other language apps? First, Duolingo. The biggest difference between Babbel and Duolingo is the price tag for the basic version. With Duolingo's basic free version, you can get pretty far in terms of your level. There's also many more languages and also more game-like exercises, so it's a bit more interactive. The problem with Duo is the odd sentences that you typically don't use in everyday life. At least, I hope you don't. The shrimp eats the bear? Like, what? So Babbel's focus on authentic language and context is clearly an advantage. We have a deep dive on Duolingo coming up very soon, so make sure to subscribe so you don't miss it. Next, FluentU. FluentU is very different from Babbel. It's completely based on videos and it immerses you into language learning in an authentic way. This way you learn the language with how native speakers actually talk. And FluentU does this by taking real-world videos like music videos, TED Talks, TV show, and movie clips and turns them into a personalized lesson. This makes the lessons extremely efficient and obviously engaging because they're based on your preferences. Oh, and with FluentU's Chrome extension, you can now choose between learning with videos on FluentU's curated video library or any subtitled content on Netflix or YouTube. This means learning with your favorite content like SpongeBob or The Office. Plus, you can actually import your favorite YouTube videos onto FluentU, making it so much easier to access your favorite videos to learn from. All the videos have interactive subtitles, so this means that each word comes with a definition, an image, an audio, example sentences, and other authentic videos where that same word is featured. Now, if your goal is to understand and talk like natives, then this is one of the best apps out there. FluentU's quizzes is also one of a kind because they have actual context. Nothing random here. This means that you learn words in the context of sentences. So obviously this makes it go beyond a superficial understanding. FluentU is basically a learning engine where the questions have images or videos that you'll actually remember and you naturally progress to building sentences all by yourself. Now, this is key if you want to go from understanding a language to actually speaking it. If you need an actual structured language course, then you will love FluentU's Story Dialogues feature. They're basically grammar lessons that feature a teacher explaining grammar concepts. Then you see the grammar in action with an engaging story. This is extremely helpful because you learn specific grammar points and you actually get a thorough understanding of why you need the grammar and how to use it. Plus, FluentU currently has live classes, which is awesome if you're looking for instant teacher feedback. Both of these features are available currently for some languages and they should be implemented to other languages very soon. All of this makes FluentU one of the most complete apps out there. And they actually have a pretty long free trial. So you can try all of this out for yourself for free. Just click the link in the description below. Drops. Drops is pretty new and they offer over 45 languages. I didn't even know you could learn that many languages. Drops is a bit more simple and the lessons are super short, around 5 minutes. So this makes Babbel's lessons appear a bit longer. Now, Drops is great if you're a visual learner because they associate the vocab with a unique image. But they focus a bit too much on learning isolated vocabulary. And there's hardly any grammar or useful phrases. I think Babbel wins since it provides more details and useful language. We also have a more in-depth Drops review coming out, so stay tuned for that. Busuu. People get Babbel and Busuu mixed up since both apps focus on similar priorities, and both of them have kind of weird names that start with the letter B. The free version of Busuu gives you access to some of the starter lessons in one language. With the paid plan, you actually get access to some of the community-based features, grammar lessons, and review functions. Busuu's exercises are actually very similar to Babbel, but on Busuu, you can't skip any lessons, unlike with Babbel. But both of their lessons have helpful tips and dialogue-based exercises. One thing that's very different with Busuu is the community-based feature. It's where you interact with other learners or even native speakers. If you're not an introvert like me, then this will definitely be a plus, since Babbel doesn't seem to have much of its own community, besides Babbel's live classes. Okay, so in conclusion, Babbel is a great app. If you're just starting a new language, it will give you a pretty nice foundation of basic vocabulary and useful phrases, which are great for beginner levels. But unfortunately, Babbel seems pretty limited in its content and its lesson plans depending on the language you want to learn, along with not offering a free trial. So this can make users vulnerable to a less fulfilling learning experience than expected. With more content, especially for intermediate and advanced learners, I truly think Babbel could greatly boost its already strong learning potential. Because it's so popular, I'm pretty sure more updates are coming to Babbel, and I'm excited to see how it evolves to live up to its hype. Now, I want to know from you guys, have you used Babbel before? Let me know your thoughts down below, and also if there's any other language learning apps that you'd like for us to review. By the way, if your goal is like mine and you want to sound more native, then you should definitely check out this video here. You'll not only learn where you are in your current language journey, but also how to peak your language learning process, and also how to achieve your language goals, whatever they may be. I'll see you there.